In this video, we will be adding fractions including mixed numbers. Here I have two fractions, and underneath I have the model that represents the fractions. I have two mixed number fractions, and every mixed number contains a whole number part and a fractional part. So if you look at the fraction and at the model underneath, you can see I have one whole and 1/3. Now this is quite a nice and easy fraction to add, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add the whole numbers. I have 2 wholes. I have 2 wholes, and then if I have a look at the numerators, I have 1 and 1. 1 and 1 is 2. And I have a denominator of 3 because each of my models are split equally into 3 parts. Another example. I have 3 wholes and 2 quarters, add 1 whole and 1 quarter. Now again, this is an easier fraction to add because there is a common denominator of 4. I'm going to add the whole numbers first. I have 3 and 1. 3 add 1 is 4. And I have 2 quarters add 1 quarter. So I have 2 and 1, which is 3, and I have a denominator of 4. Now this time it gets a little bit trickier because there is no common denominator. I'm going to show you how to add the fractions by converting the mixed number fraction into an improper fraction. When we change between a mixed number, we're saying how many parts there are in total, and we're giving that information in the form of a fraction. The first thing that we must do is we must convert the mixed number into an improper fraction. My denominator of my mixed number fraction is 2, and I have 1 whole here. So that means I have 1 whole lot of 2. I have 1 lot of 2, which is 2, and I have 1 more part to add, which is the numerator. 2 and 1 is 3. So I have a numerator of 3. 3 is my total number of parts, and I use the same numerator, which is 2. And I'm adding 3 quarters, which is the same fraction as here. But if we look at our fraction, 3 halves add 3 quarters, you will notice that they have different denominators. Now you should remember, if a fraction has a different denominator and you're trying to add them, it will be tricky. So to make it easier, we're going to give them a common denominator. If you cannot remember how to do this, look back at the adding and subtracting fractions with different denominators video to refresh your memory. Now here, the lowest common multiple of 2 and of 4 is 4. So we will have denominators of 4. What did I do to 2 to get to 4? I multiplied it by 2. Now you should remember the rule of whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. Whatever you do to the denominator, you must do to the numerator. So I must also multiply it by 2. 3 times 2 is 6. And I'm going to copy the fraction over from here because it already has a denominator of 4. Now I have two fractions which have common denominators. It will be easy for me to add them. 6 and 3, that's 9, and I will keep my denominator as 4. Now I want to express my answer as a mixed number opposed to an improper fraction. So I want to convert 9/4 into a mixed number fraction. And to do this, I must divide them. 9 divided by 4. How many 4s are there in 9? 4, 8. There are 2. And then the difference between 8 and 9, the remainder is 1. And the denominator will stay as 4. 2 wholes and 1/4. Now again, we can also do this without using a diagram, and that's what we're going to practice here now. 1 whole and 2/3 add 3/6. Now if I have a look at my denominator of my mixed number fraction, it is 3, and I have 1 whole. So I have 1 lot of 3, that is 3. And I have another part in the numerator. So I have 3 add 2. 3 add 2 is 5. 5 is my numerator. And I keep 3 as my denominator. And I am adding 3/6. Now again, you will notice that they have different denominators. Let's give them a common denominator of 6. What did I do to 3 to get to 6? I multiplied it by 2. Let's go ahead and do the same to the numerator. 5 times 2 is 10. I'm going to copy the second fraction over because you would have already noticed that it already has a denominator of 6. 10 add 3 is 13, and 6 is a denominator. Now let's express our fraction as a mixed number. How many 6's in 13? 6, 12. There are 2. And the difference between 12 and 13 is 1. 2 wholes and 1/6, and that is in its simplest form. Over to you. I have 3 sections of questions that I want you to attempt. If at any point you get stuck, rewind the video and go through some more of the examples. Come back when you've had an opportunity to try some of these out. Now that you've had an opportunity to practice some of the skills that we've learnt in the video, let's go through question number 1. So we had 3 wholes and 4/6 add 18/12. Now if I have a look at my denominator, it is 6, and I have 3 wholes. I have 3 lots of 6. 6, 12, 18, and then I need to add the numerator. 18 add 4. Well, I know that is 22. With 6 as the denominator. Now the second part of the fraction is 18/12. Now these have different denominators, so let's give them the same denominator. The lowest common denominator is 12. What did I do to 6 to get to 12? I multiplied it by 2. Do the same to the numerator. 22 times 2 is 44. Add 18/12. I'm just going to go underneath, is 62 with the denominator of 12. Now I want to express this improper fraction as a mixed number, so I need to ask myself, how many 12s are there in 62? Well, I know that 12 times 5 is 60, so there are 5 wholes with 2 remaining and a denominator of 12. 5 wholes and 2 12s. Now if I look at my fractional part of the answer, 2 12s, they are both even numbers, and I know I can simplify them by dividing them both by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. 5 wholes and 1/6. Now if we look at part A of this question, 2 wholes and 3/8 add 2 wholes and 13/16. So if we start by looking, we have a denominator of 8 and I have 2 wholes. I have 2 lots of 8, which is 16, and then if I add my numerator, 16 add 3 is 19. And I have a denominator of 8. Now on the second mixed number fraction, I have a denominator of 16 and I have a whole number of 2. 2 lots of 16 is 32, and then if I add 13 from my numerator, that should give you an answer of 45. 45/16. Now I'm going to give them both a common denominator, and the lowest one is 16. What did I do to 8 to get to 16? I multiplied it by 2. Do the same to the numerator. 19 times 2 is 38. And 45/16. Now if I go underneath again, because I've run out of room, 38 add 45, that is 83. 83/16. Now, this is where the numbers are growing in size. So this is where you perhaps might need to think about doing column method if some of the calculations you can't do mentally. Now I have an answer of 83/16, but I don't want to express my answer as an improper fraction. I want it to be expressed as a mixed number. So I need to know how many 16s there are in 83. So perhaps you might want to practice some of your bus stop, and there is a video on dividing using the bus stop if you can't remember how. 16s into 83. I know there are 5 16s in 80, so we will have 5 wholes with a remainder of 3 and a denominator of 16. 5 wholes and 3/16. Now if we clear this and have a look at part B, I have 1 whole and 5/8, add 3 wholes and 7/16. If I have a look at my denominator, it is 8, and I have a whole of 1. 1 lot of 8 is 8, add 5, that is 13. 13/8, add 3 wholes and 7/16. So I have 3 lots of 16, which is 48, and I need to add 7 to it, which is 55. 55/16. Give my denominators a common denominator of 16. What did I do to 8 to get to 16? I multiplied it by 2. Multiply 13 by 2. That will give you 26. Add 55/16. 55 add 26 is 81. 81 sixteenths. Now again, I don't want to express my answer as an improper fraction. I want it to be a mixed number, so I need to know how many 16s there are in 81. You should remember that there are 5 16s in 80, so there are 5 wholes, and the difference between 80 and 81 is 1/16. 5 wholes and 1/16. Okay, finally, let's have a look at the final question. A postman has delivered half his letters. He delivers a further 2/5. What fraction of his letters has he delivered? So let's pull out some of the important information. So we know the postman delivered half his letters and then a further 2/5. So if we write those fractions down, half and 2/5. Okay, great. Now we know the two fractions that we're dealing with, but what do we need to do to these two fractions? What fraction of his letters has he delivered? So we need to know the total, how many he's delivered altogether. So you should know we must add. Now you'll notice that I don't have a common denominator. Now to do that, I'm going to multiply my two denominators together. Now in a previous video, you'll remember I told you that if you multiply the two denominators together to get a common denominator, you won't always get the lowest common multiple, you will get a common multiple. Now in this case, if I do times the two together, it will give me the lowest common multiple, and I know that's 10. What did I do to 2 to get to 10? I multiplied it by 5. So I must do the same to the top. 1 times 5 is 5. Add. What did I do to 5 to get to 10? I multiplied it by 2. So I must multiply the numerator by 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 5 tenths add 4 tenths. 5 add 4 is 9, and my denominator will remain as 10. So the answer to this question is 9/10 in its simplest form. Okay, well done. If you have found any of the content in this video quite tricky, perhaps ask your parents to write you some questions very similar to the ones that we've practiced, just so you have more practice and you can become a little bit more confident. Now you'll have noticed that each video that goes by, the content becomes a little bit more tricky. If there are things that you are still struggling with, go back to previous videos and practice them again to consolidate those skills, because you will need them to move on to the next step of fractions.